Hi, welcome to Flashpoints. I'm Steve Chaggaris, joined by Juan Zarate, CBS News' Senior National Security Analyst. Thanks for joining us.
Steve, great seeing you.
Great to see you. So we've got some news here in Iraq. The first U.S. airstrike since the president authorized these airstrikes on Thursday night. They bombed ISIS artillery near Erbil in northern Iraq. Set the stage for us. How did we get here? And frankly, is what the U.S. did enough?
Well, what you see is the president reacting to a very dangerous situation. You had Islamic State forces beginning to threaten, more fundamentally, Kurdistan, and in particular Erbil, where you have American personnel sort of bunkered. Those that have left other parts of Iraq because of the danger of this have retreated there. Also, refugees from other parts of Iraq have come to Kurdistan. And the Peshmerga, who are very close allies of the United States, seen as a legitimate fighting force, having some trouble defending against the Islamic State. So that has driven a good bit of the decision making. Plus the humanitarian crisis, the crisis of the Yazidis trapped on the mountain, Mount Shinjar, and being surrounded by the Islamic State presents a humanitarian disaster that I think the administration had to react to, with the Iraqi government asking for help. And so the airstrike here is a first step in dealing with the Islamic State advance and the humanitarian problem. Is it enough? I don't think so, and I think there's some fundamental policy questions at play.
Now, there are approximately 150 Americans, military, diplomats, et cetera, in Erbil. They were moved there in June. The idea was that part of the country was supposedly secure. Part of this, obviously, is to defend that, but was there an intelligence failure here?
Well, I think, Kurdistan has always been sort of the stable part of Iraq, economically, socially, culturally, militarily. And so the retreat to Erbil was seen as a relatively safe measure for U.S. personnel. But I do think there's a real question here as to whether or not we've underestimated the strength, capabilities, and momentum of the Islamic State. It seems like the world has been surprised at the pace at which the Islamic State has been able to take and hold territory. The assault on Mosul was a real defining moment, but it seems like there's been waning attention to the fact that the Islamic State has continued to expand its reach in Syria, in Iraq, and it is a real threat not just to Baghdad but to parts of Kurdistan. So I think there was an underestimation of the ability of this group to continue its momentum and its fight, and then you now see the U.S. administration having to react.
Does something like this have a real effect on ISIS and their advance?
Well, I think if the U.S. is serious about pushing ISIS back, it can. The real question for the administration is what is the policy? What is the strategy? In the first instance, it's obviously to protect Erbil and American personnel there, and certainly our Kurdish friends and the Peshmerga forces, also dealing with the humanitarian issue. But we have to ask ourselves a question, what is the intent of U.S. intervention? Is it beyond just protection of U.S. interests? Is it protection of Kurdistan writ large? Is it the ability to preserve the cohesion of the Iraqi state? Or is it the ultimate defeat and dislodging of the Islamic State itself? The administration has not defined that last dimension as their goal, but I think now that the U.S. is engaged, even if minimally, you have to start asking that question. Will what we do be enough to not only stop the onslaught, but are we in this to actually defeat this group, or are we just playing as a defensive holding pattern? That's a key fundamental policy question that's yet to be answered, and people in the region will want to know the answer from the United States.
Something we'll be watching very closely over the coming weeks.
We've got to keep watching it.
Juan Zarate, thanks for joining us. I'm Steve Chaggaris. Thanks for watching Flashpoints.